Tyler, thanks for being on the Simply Sell podcast. I'm excited to have you on here. You are becoming a real force in the steel industry. So I've had some really good guests on my show, but I thought I would spice it up with a recruiter, especially since it's the end of the year and companies are out there trying to figure out what they're going to do, building out their teams, and people are out there trying to advance their careers. So thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, Brian. Thank you for having me on and just adjusting my camera here. Sorry to record this right in the middle of a processing center. I know it's a little bit difficult here, but no, I appreciate it. It's an honor.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Currently, you live just outside New York City. So tell me a little bit about yourself. You got wife, kids, I'm assuming?
Yeah. So I live in Fairfield County, Connecticut, which is just over the border of New York. I was born and raised just about 45 minutes north of New York City in a town called Yorktown Heights, New York. And then when my wife and I decided to get married, we said, okay, where are we going to set up shop? Where are we going to go? And Connecticut was probably the best place around us for that time. And while in that time, I wasn't a recruiter just yet. I was working at a site called Indeed.com. You might have heard of it before, the largest job site in the world. And I was doing sales for them for about 5 years and, was doing very well, got to understand the world of sales and everything like that. And then, but I always had that entrepreneurial bug, always wanted to kind of go after something else and be on my own and own something for myself, right? So when COVID hit, a couple things started to change and I moved positions from Indeed to another company. Unfortunately, that other company didn't work out, and I found myself laid off without a job just 8 weeks before my wife was due with our first child. So I had to make a decision, right? It's now or never. Am I going to go and get another job, or am I going to keep putting off this business that I had on the side with me for a little bit and actually go in full time? So I chose the latter, right? I went in full time with my business, American Dream Search. I went in to recruit sales talent nationwide. But it was too broad, right? You got to be really a specialist in a certain field to really maximize your value as a recruiter. So one of my first clients was a steel service center. They needed help building out their flat rolled distribution team. We were successful with that. And I said, you know what? I'm going to run with this. I'm going to be the recruiter of steel. So right now, from then on, we only specialize in recruiting very specifically commercial sales talent within the steel industry. So that's how I got my start.
Interesting. Okay. Well, fate favors the bold. I mean, you definitely jumped right into it. So
Yes.
I'll tell you what, I admire that because a lot of people are very conservative and you just jumped right into it. So actually take a step back. What got you into recruiting? So obviously you got into Indeed, but something must have pushed you into recruiting.
Yeah, so Indeed, I mean, it's in the recruiting world, right? It's recruitment advertising. It's the largest job site in the world. So I spoke with probably over 1,000 employers at my time in Indeed, being, a mid-market and an enterprise account executive. But just speaking with folks about their recruitment strategy, understanding the world of recruitment, got me thinking about different businesses that I can go into myself. And I think, if you're ever going to go into entrepreneurship, which a lot of salespeople tend to have that bug to them, right? Go into what you know. Because it's for me to go into, let's say, all right, I'm going to be, own an electrical business or an HVAC business. I don't know that world, right? I didn't grow up in that. I didn't, do that myself. So to jump in that business would be difficult for me. But recruiting, I understood it. I talked with employers before. I actually was good at selling Indeed's product, which was called Indeed Hire, which is their little taste at recruitment at the time. So I said, you know what? If I'm going to do anything, this is the business to do it. And it ended up working out. So that's how it happened.
Okay. So let's dive right into this. So I think being a recruiter requires a real diversified sales approach because you have to sell not only the companies that you're going to work with, but you also have to sell the workers as well. So tell us a little bit about that because when I really was thinking about you and your sales, you've got two different types of approaches, I would think, depending on if you're talking to an actual company that you're recruiting for versus people that are coming to you saying, hey, I'm looking to make a job switch. So kind of tell the audience a little bit about that.
Yeah, it is a double-edged sword. And I'll say this, think about whatever product that you're selling, right? Imagine that product had feelings, had emotions, had a wife at home that they had to okay something with, had stuff that came up like a counter offer, right? selling people is hard because people have their own emotions, their own ideas, their own aspirations. It's not selling software. It's not selling steel. It's not any of that. So yes, it is tough recruitment and is a double-edged sword as far as, the sales process and everything. But it's interesting to navigate, right? So the approach I try to take, and I alluded this into my intro, was you always want to provide maximum value as a salesperson, because that's what it is at the end of the day. You're providing value to your customers, right? So what's the number one way I could provide value to my clients? Well, to have great candidates, right? To have great talent that they don't have access to themselves, because I put in the work to nurture those relationships. That's number one. What about the candidates? The best value I could provide to my candidates is a good opportunity at a great company. So the way I would focus my business and the way I would approach the sales aspect here is find great people first. That's what I did. That's how I got my in at certain companies, right? You market those people to those companies. They say, okay, Tyler's got some connections. He's got some relationships. I think we'll work with him, right? And then you keep doing that over and over again, and then it starts to snowball, and then you could provide your candidates with great companies, great clients, right? So that's the approach that I've taken. You always want to provide maximum value and also a great experience along the way, right? Anytime somebody contacts me, you're always getting a response within 24 hours. I'm not going to ghost you. If a candidate doesn't get selected for a job, I shoot you a text. I give you a call. I said, hey, man, didn't work out this time. They're not looking for your type of skill set, but I'm going to hold on to your stuff and I will reach back out if something else comes up. And if something comes up on your end, you let me know too. You keep that relationship going, right? If it's a client and maybe things are a little bit tough with that search, right? I'm going to be open and honest with them. I'm going to say, hey guys, we're looking for a needle in a haystack here. I don't have a guy with a book of business in Sioux City right now with your exact product line, right? It just doesn't exist. So here's what we can do. Here are the options. What do you think? That's just the way you got to run with it. At the end of the day, guys, sales, whether you're recruiting, whether you're selling steel, whether you're selling software, whatever it is, it's a relationship business. The relationships will prevent you from getting replaced by AI. I could assure you that. And you got to provide maximum value and a great experience for your customers.
Great. Okay. Well, it sounds like that's a blueprint for pretty much sales in a lot of different things, especially the steel industry, but we can talk about that all
Yeah.
day. So since this is a sales podcast, what character traits are you looking for in a salesperson? What does a sales rep need to have in order to succeed, in the world that you're working in steel?
Yeah, exactly. So good question. So there's a lot of salespeople out there, but there's not a lot of sales hunters. So what I mean by that is there are a lot of account managers. There's a lot of people that you can throw into territory. They could keep those relationships coasting. They could, okay, that RFQ comes in. We could just, sign the line there. We'll continue doing business as usual, right? But how many are going to go in and dig through those accounts and really uncover what other opportunity exists? How many have the fortitude, the internal drive, the grit and honestly, the skill set and strategic ability to map out a market, prospect effectively, bring on new business, and then the business that you currently have, how do they upsell that? How do they increase that? Right. So what I really try to look for when I'm marketing sales candidates and bringing sales candidates to my folks isn't just a book of business, because while it could be helpful at the initial run, right? There's a couple of things to keep in mind with that. When somebody says I have a book of business, that means a couple customers would travel with them, supposedly, right? That's not taking into account what your pricing is. That's not taking into account what your product line is. That's not taking into account your brand. They might have been burned by your brand before by a previous rep, right? They might have been, had great pricing at another service center. And if this guy comes in at 2x the cost, it's going to be a no-go regardless of how good those relationships are. Usually when I hear someone has a book of business, it's a good sign, but you have to dig deeper, right? Is it just 3 or 4 relationships that are solid that will just go with them, but the other 60 accounts are up in the air, right? Because that's sometimes the case. What I'd rather have a guy with, say, hey, I don't really have a book of business to give you, but I have experience, I have the knowledge, I have the drive to go out and get new business. Here's my prospecting methodology. Here's how I go about it. Here's my tenacity. Here's how I open new doors. And here's how I could go into your current accounts and extract new opportunity from there. You really want to try to find a hunter as opposed to just a farmer.
That's a great point because I see that every day, in the world. There's a lot of people that can manage accounts, but there's very, very few that can go out there and open new business and start with like no accounts and then build a book of business. I hear every day, let's build this guy a book of business. Well, I'd rather say, hey, let's see if the guy can build his own book and
Correct.
from there. That's what I would rather see. So great points. Really, really like the way that you expanded upon that. Very good content for our audience. So, another question: what is more important today in sales? Experience and knowledge of the product or service or in the industry, or just the ability to outwork everyone else? So this is an interesting one because we may differ on this, but that's okay. But I'd be curious to see what you have to say because you're the one that's in the trenches with salespeople. So let's hear what you have to say about that one.
Yeah, so I think we did go back and forth on LinkedIn about this one a little
We
bit. I
did.
remember that, Brian. So here's what I would say. In an ideal world, you want both. You want the product knowledge and you want somebody that has that drive and has that sales ability. I think at the end of the day, if I have somebody with a ton of product knowledge, but no sales knowledge, it's going to be tough because, and we can get that. I know this is going to be later in your questioning too. I think that's where a lot of people underestimate how difficult sales can be at times. And that's why some folks fail because they underestimate how long the cycle is and how tough it is to actually sometimes break into new accounts and new relationships. So I would really want somebody with sales expertise, somebody who has a proven track record of, opening new accounts, large accounts, if that, managing a contractual sales cycle, um, you know, managing maybe a current clientele, but upselling those and experience in the resume having success with that. I think if we could get them up to speed on the product, that's only going to help them. It's only going to help them provide more value. But I would be a little bit weary bringing somebody with a ton of product knowledge into a sales role when we don't know if they're going to really succeed in sales. Not to say product knowledge isn't valuable, because it absolutely is. I think, and this is another point too, I think if the person is good at sales, they're going to do everything they can to learn the product and learn their customers, right? Because like we alluded to in the first part, sales is all about providing maximum value. If you don't really know the product you're selling or you don't know your customers and how it's applied, your usefulness is going to be limited. So I would tend to think that salesperson gets up to speed as quick as possible. That's why I would lean a little bit more towards the sales guy.
I agree. I think sometimes, depending on what product you're selling, it's easier to teach the product than it is to teach someone how to sell. So a lot of times there's a lot of people that have innate qualities that will allow them to sell. And all
Hmm.
they really need to do is learn the product and a few little secrets there on sales, as opposed to taking someone and then just teaching them sales, even though they may be a great product manager, but being able to take that product knowledge and put it into sales sometimes can be difficult. I've seen it happen. I've seen really good in the steel industry. People that are metallurgists are unbelievable salespeople because the
Hmm.
reason why they are good at sales is because they're good at solving problems. Metallurgists, what
Yeah,
do they? They know steel, but they all, of course, know how to solve the problem. Some really good salespeople have come out of metallurgy, so I've seen that
I could
happen.
see that for
It's
sure.
very good. We all know that qualifying is critical when it comes to sales. How do you qualify a company to see if they're a fit for your client base? So let's start with that question first, and then we'll flip it in a second. But let's start with qualifying the company that you're working with. How do you qualify them?
Yeah, so it's a couple things, right? So number one, are they an attractive place to even, market, to take to market, right? Do they have a good brand in the market? Are they reputable? Do people have good things to say about them? An easy way to look at that is look at Glassdoor reviews, look at Indeed reviews, but also just talk to people, right? Like, are they going somewhere? Are they growing? Or are they just kind of coasting? Are they in decline, right? What's the situation there? The other aspect is, do they invest in their salespeople? Do they invest in CRMs and tools, training, right? If they don't invest in any of those things, I'd have to think, they're just kind of bringing in people, hoping and praying that they'll just bring in new business without, giving anything in return. So I try to see if they invest in their people, if they invest in tools and technology. And then I would say, just Obviously turnover, right? I mean, if people are constantly turning over and, people are only lasting less than a year there, that's a red flag. But you want to see good retention, investment in people and tools and technology, a good brand. And then lastly, I would say you got to be reasonable with what you're putting out there, right? I'm not going to take a role to market to my candidates that's 20% below what the market average is on compensation, right? You need to be competitive, especially if you're looking for good people. I also would really urge companies to look into hybrid or remote opportunities where and if possible, only because you're really limiting yourself if you don't, right? If you limit yourself to a strict geographical area, you're only looking at talent within that pool. Very difficult to recruit people, to relocate people nowadays with remote opportunities. And also think of this, your competition is also offering remote as well. So you're just putting yourself in a bind. It makes it tougher to recruit, makes it less attractive to applicants out there. I think providing good compensation, freedom and flexibility for your candidates where possible. Not to say that you can't have a culture and have an in-office atmosphere, but it needs to be done in a way that understands where the times that we're in. Overall, just a forward-thinking company, right? Growth mindset, looking at the future.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I like that. That seems to be what the clients are looking for these days, or prospective, workers are looking for these days. They're looking for remote, they're looking for hybrid, and they're looking for culture. I think those are three things that people are looking for right now. And so if you can hit those three, I mean, you could attract really good talent. So
Sure.
flipping the script here, how do you qualify a worker to see if they would be a fit for companies you are working with? So that's an interesting one too, because the last thing you would want to do is bring clients to your company that you're recruiting for that aren't a fit. And if they stand out as not a fit, it kind of flows back on you, is kind of what I would be thinking.
Sure. So I actually do a scorecard that breaks it down into 5 key areas. So if you got your pen and paper, if you're a hiring manager, get this down. Number 1 is presentation, right? How does the candidate present themselves, specifically on a phone screen, right? If you're a salesperson and you seem unenthusiastic, or, your language is profane, or you just seem uninterested, you're not presenting yourself well, right? Do you know your numbers? Are you able to present yourself in a good way? If I'm doing a virtual call like this, did you shower today? Did you put on something nice, right? All those things matter because you're a representative of the company. So how you present yourself to me or an interviewer is indicative of how you're going to present yourself to a client. So how do they present themselves? Scale 1 to 5, 5 being the highest. The second thing I would look at is how are their qualifications aligned to the job description. So if the job description is we want somebody with 3+ years outside sales in Indiana selling flat rolled steel, right? How close are they to that? Have they sold flat roll before? Are they in Indiana now? Do they have that 3+ years, right? Boom, boom, boom. Do they have a book of business, or, do they have that hunter mentality that we need? Check off the boxes there. Third thing I would look at is cultural alignment, right? What are your values as a company? What's your mission? How is this person aligned with that? So if your values are integrity, are hard work, are togetherness, whatever the case may be, what are some examples that the candidate can put forth that would align them with your culture? So we got presentation, we got the job description alignment, we got company culture alignment. The fourth thing I would look at is motivation, right? So are they actually motivated to make a move, or are they just kind of testing the waters, seeing what's out there, right? Because what we don't want to do is get somebody 3 steps in the interview process. You flew them out for $1,000. They visited your, headquarters and everything. They interviewed your whole team. Everyone loves them. And then you put out an offer and say, I'm not really looking right now. You don't want to do that.
Wow.
So you got to test their motivation. So, and a simple question you could ask them is, okay, when you're down the line in this process, with everything that you know now, if we're able to hit your number with where you need to be compensation wise, would you take the role? Plain and simple. If it's not a quick yes, then you got to dig deeper, right? So you got to test their motivation. So all those factors really go into play of who I'm going to submit to a client.
Okay, interesting. Well, I'm thankful that I showered before here this call here, and did my hair too. So I checked some of the boxes.
That's okay, Brian, and that's all right. No worries, you're good. And I will say this, Brian, and I don't, I'm not sure they're affiliated in any way, but Majestic Steel was a client of mine absolute great company to work alongside, and an example of a great company, right? Somebody who's forward thinking, somebody who invests in tools, the latest tools and technology for their people, great culture. That's a model, I would say, for a lot of service centers out there looking to grow.
I would agree. That's why I've been there for 34 years.
Don't blame you.
So now you focus on the steel industry, and there's a lot of changes going on with consolidation. I mean, a few months ago we saw the Ryerson Olympic thing, and then 2 weeks ago or last week, whenever it was, the Worthington Klockner thing, and I mean, it's both of those I think have kind of caught everybody off guard. So if you just think about it, there's probably going to be people out there with the consolidation happening, looking for other opportunities. Either they may be pushed out or that they don't align with the new ownership or
Mhm.
some of those things. So, what suggestions would you give to people who could be potentially impacted by this consolidation, or if there's more consolidation that they think is going to happen potentially with their company? What kind of suggestions would you be giving to those potential workers or people looking for other opportunities out in the market?
Great question. Yes, there's a lot of consolidation going on. You see what happened with Ryerson and Olympic lately. Massive, massive deal. But yeah, and it's only going to continue to happen in the future, probably as well. So, what I would say is keep yourself informed, right? Understand what your company's doing. And if there's an acquisition taking place, ask some questions, but also just be observant, right? If you feel like something is going to change and something's different, your gut probably is right. And that's why you always have to be, talking with folks like myself, right? Recruiters in the industry, headhunters that have a pulse on the market, understand what else is out there. Not that you're going to move right this second, but if something does happen, okay, I have that relationship. I could text Tyler. I have him on speed dial. I'll give him a call because it could happen really quickly. And what you don't want to do is find yourself flat footed. So, what I would say is keep your resume up to date, right? Update it every 6 months. Make sure that you have it in a good form where you're showing your achievements over your responsibilities, that you know your numbers, right? How much tons did you sell last year? What was the dollar amount? What was the profit margin, right? We want to know those things. And yeah, always get a pulse of the market, see what's out there because you never know what could happen. And, I'm always happy to help folks that are in that position. It's unfortunate, but it's just part of the game. So you gotta stay up on it.
Absolutely. Well said. So, quick question here. Why do people fail in sales? So you're in sales, you see it, you see people that get into sales and then they maybe fail. What is the one reason why people fail in sales?
Two-part answer. So for first goers in sales, people that have never been in sales, I think you underestimate the toll rejection can take on you and how much no's it's going to take to get to a yes, right? I don't care if you're the best salesperson in the world, you're going to get some no's. You're going to get rejected. You're going to get kicked on your you know what, right? So you have to be able to be resilient and roll with the punches. And it's going to be a numbers game to a degree, right? And as you sharpen your skill set, those numbers required will be less, but you need to push forward and it's going to take a lot of work. So you got to be resilient and be able to deal with rejection. Not many people can do it, which is why there are not many, not everyone's a salesperson, and it's why salespeople make the big bucks, right? Because you can't always, not everyone could do that. So that's the first part. The second part I would say is folks that have been in sales a little bit, I think you might get complacent, right? I think there's sometimes little bit of a beginner's luck that might happen if you start off really good or you start off hot or something. And then all of a sudden, you start to see, oh, that number one rep, he was number one for 2, 3 years in a row. Now he's number three. Now he's number eight. Now he's number 47. And now he got kicked out of the company. So that happens. That happens because of complacency, and you forget what got you there in the first place. And I'll say this, for anyone in a sales slump, any time that I found myself in a little bit of a slump where, I wasn't on pace to hit my goal or my target, whatever that may be, it's all about human conversations. Pick up the phone and talk with somebody. It's not just about the amount of dials you make, it's the amount of conversations you have. Just talk with people. You'll be amazed at what could happen when you pick up the phone and you start having conversations. But that's what you got to do. And I'll say if you don't want to fail in sales, just remember what made you successful in the first place. And if you're new to sales, just know it's going to take a lot of rejection, but you'll get through it.
Interesting. Great answers. So, why do people succeed in sales? Last question.
Why do people succeed? I think, there's a little bit of a fear of failure. I think it's that internal drive that gets them, rolling every day. Like we just talked about, there's some folks that get into a slump and then, they might have been President's Club for 2, 3 years in a row, and then they just start slipping and slipping because they got complacency. The top reps, I don't think that ever really creeps in, or if it does, it's immediately squashed because there's this internal drive that they have. It's not due to external factors, right? Yes, compensation and mission of the company and all that good stuff is going to help, and it's required. But really, I would say, what makes people successful is they just, there's that internal motivation, internal drive, that fear of failure that, you know what, I hate to lose, right? I'm not going to be at the bottom of my dash. I'm not going to miss my goal. So I'm just going to do whatever the hell it takes. That's just what it is. And I think if you have that, you know it. If you don't have it, you're going to have to try to find it because that's what makes the best reps out there.
Great. This has been a great podcast. Thank you so much for being on. I really, really admire your tenacity. I saw you at SMU. I see you on LinkedIn. What you bring to the table with just a passion for the industry is amazing. And so this has been a great podcast for me to be able to just get to know you a little bit. The audience that the audience is going to love this podcast, and I can't wait for them to hear this. So I hope you and your family have a wonderful holiday. And thanks again, Tyler, for being on this podcast, Simply Sell Podcast. If you're out there looking for a job and you're in steel, you need to reach out to Tyler Rossi, find him on LinkedIn, find him on his podcast. This guy is going to literally run through one of those coils for you. So thank you so much for being on the
Thank you, Brian.
and have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thank you. I appreciate it.